Hello and welcome to this Serial Geek TV episode commentary for Sweet Bee's Home, an episode of She-Ra, Princess of Power, produced by Filmation Studios. Now, there's so much I'm going to attempt to cram into this episode commentary that I'm not sure the length of the episode itself will allow me to, but I'll do my best. First, let me tell you a little bit about my history with this episode. Over here in the UK, at least on terrestrial TV, we never received She-Ra's second season. We had She-Ra's first season shown a good few times, sporadically, but not the first 5 episodes. But yeah, I was not aware of season 2 for the longest time. And here's a funny little story. When I first spoke to Larry DiTillio, and he was the first person online to reveal to me back in 1997 that He-Man had 130 episodes, he also revealed that She-Ra had a season of 65. But here's the thing. Larry left Filmation after She-Ra's first season, so he wasn't even aware of She-Ra's second season. Eventually, I would learn that there were 14 episodes in She-Ra's second season. Then, Owen Sharp, a fan of He-Man and She-Ra, who had actually written and submitted a script to Filmation in the 80s, popped up with his website, and it blew my mind. He uploaded a list he had made of the episodes during his time at university, and there weren't just 14 episodes from She-Ra's second season, but 28. Can you imagine how the He-Man and She-Ra community reacted to that news? During that time, I spoke to Owen Sharp a great deal, who pointed out to me during our conversations the work of Filmation director Tom Tataranaowicz in the She-Ra series. Tom began directorial duties at Filmation with She-Ra, and I'm so thankful he did. Owen explained that whenever Tom's name popped up in an episode, it often meant that good things would happen visually. Owen asked me if I'd ever seen the She-Ra episode Sweet Bee's Home. I had not, and the title didn't sound like an episode of She-Ra that would really appeal to me. Within a week, Owen sent over a VHS tape he had edited in the 80s with clips from Sweet Bee's Home. When I first watched the tape, I could not believe what I was seeing. Here was an episode that added an entirely new dimension to He-Man. However, it wasn't just the story, it was the animation and direction. In the hands of another director, Sweet Bee's Home would not have been as good, and I think this is largely in part to the episode being the brainchild of writer Bob Ford and Tom Tataranaowicz himself. They were in their early 20s and both considered Froster to be the most striking female in the series and wanted to have her animated in a way to accentuate her beauty, and boy did they ever. Now, we're about to see a wonderful piece of Tom T direction when the Horde fire upon Sweet Bee's ship. Here we go. Yes, look at that, and listen to this moment.
A spaceship. The Horde shot down a spaceship.
I love Adam's horror combined with the music. There's a real sense of drama of epic proportions. A spaceship. The Horde shut down a spaceship. The words are almost stuck in his throat. Fantastic. And now the transformations begin. On occasion, Tom T would have fun with She-Ra's transformation, editing it so that it was very short but unique. Here we get the full stock sequences simply edited together, and it works. Much like I did with the Price of Freedom episode commentary, I'm going to try and talk about this episode overall, as well as dip in and out of what we're seeing on screen. So, this episode, Sweet Bee's Home, is easily one of the best episodes of the series, and in fact, if not for the meaning and dramatic value of another Bob Ford script, yes, The Price of Freedom, Sweet Bee's Home would definitely be the best episode in the series, at least in the opinion of this fan. Anyone who has seen this episode, and I'm guessing that more than a few of you have, know that the story has little to do with Sweet Bee or her home, and everything to do with He-Man and Froster's comical and beautifully animated interactions. The previously mentioned Owen Sharp coined the phrase the He-Man Froster sex show when summarising this episode in one line, and Sweet Bee's Home lives up to its reputation as the most risque episode in the He-Man and She-Ra series, because in 22 minutes, the hero of an entire franchise, the most powerful man in the universe, is turned into a shy, awkward teenager, discomforted by the overt advances of a seductress. And speaking of that very same seductress...
Did you say Icy?
We're about to see her make her appearance in this episode, and I should highlight what an awesome cast this episode has. We have She-Ra and He-Man, Swiftwind, Mermista, and Froster. Even Enchanter shows up. And now begins Tom Tataranaowicz having fun with the characters. The guy always knew how to direct, but in this episode, he's having a wealth of fun, directing his animators and timing the existing stock, mixed with new animation, resulting in some fantastic visuals. Now, earlier I said that in the hands of another director, Sweetbee's Home would not have been as good. This is not a knock on other Filmation directors, but Tom T's episodes were something else. What he did is look at the Filmation stock system and apply it in the most creative of ways. Rather than have a character simply stand there talking in close-up, Tom would utilise the stock so that characters blinked realistically, their eyes would widen to accentuate certain pieces of dialogue, and they would even smile as they talked with specific pieces of dialogue. It made the viewing experience rather enriching. The other thing that you'll notice throughout this episode is the new animation. Animation was another of Tom Tadaranowitz's plus points. He would choose specific animators for certain scenes he knew would look good, as he knew their strengths. One particular animator at Filmation that he was a fan of was Sherry Wheeler. Sherry was a female animator with an amazing talent for character animation. Her work pops up a great deal in this episode. She also animated romantic scenes in the episodes The Wizard and Romeo and Glimmer. Sherry Wheeler would also go on to animate the very memorable kiss in the animated Brave Star movie too. To say she was a talent would be an understatement. Not only was Sherry's animation beautiful, but Tom would time the sequences to get the best reactions possible. Throughout the episodes that Tom directed, he would ensure that each and every shot would be very strong and the best that it could be. And Tom Tadaranowitz was a young, hungry director determined to make a statement with his work. He would try to push the envelope so many times. Everything from The Problem with Power to Sweetbee's Home was challenged at some point, and he fought for his vision each and every time. Certain sequences in this particular episode pushed the boundaries slightly, and so Tom had to rein them in, but not by much. Oh, so there's a scene removed here that pops up in the script. A Horde trooper praises Hordak's shooting, stating that the rebels are helpless. Hordak then commands a detachment of robots sent out to capture them and prevent them from interfering with the raising of the downed spacecraft, remarking, "After all, I shot it down, it's mine." And now we're about to see Froster's flirting really kick in, as well as He-Man's comical expressions.
She-Ra.
No time, He-Man.
I love He-Man's expression as he simply remarks, "She-Ra," with the Princess of Power hilariously cutting him off. A little fact I'll throw in before I forget. Froster was designed by artist Dale Hendrickson based on many different concepts provided by the character design department. Dale would actually go on to become a prominent character designer on The Simpsons, so it's fair to say he did okay for himself post-Filmation. And here we go. He-Man and Froster left alone to fight a plethora of Horde troopers in the most comical of ways. But, as we see, thanks to the ideas of Bob Ford and the exquisite direction of Tom Tadaranowitz, He-Man and Froster make for a rather great team. Muscle and Ice. Sounds like a wrestling tag team from the 80s. And again, as we saw in The Price of Freedom, the Horde troopers can stop He-Man in his tracks with their great firepower. But yeah, I do love this action scene. He-Man creating the wave and Froster using her magical abilities. And the scene coming up, which I'll let play out, is easily one of the most iconic scenes in the episode. He-Man on top of Froster, who has absolutely no problem with him being there and even tries to pull him closer.
Are you all right?
Oh, couldn't be better.
Uh-oh.
That gorgeous musical sting when Froster opens her eyes to see He-Man above her was used a few times in He-Man's first season, most memorably in Teela's Quest. It even appears as a piece of background music in the epic Bruce Timm painted book with accompanying record, The Power of the Evil Horde. A little side anecdote. You may have heard me tell the story of my dear friend Lee Clevenger, who used to live about a 3-mile drive from Filmation's building on the corner of Sherman Way and Lindley in Los Angeles. Lee was the first person to access the Filmation warehouse in the late 90s, and when I visited him in 2001, I was able to access the warehouse and go through boxes upon boxes of organised artwork, and 3 of these large boxes would usually result in one episode. As you can imagine, upon my first visit I had a good look through the Sweetbee's Home boxes, and managed to retrieve the pieces I was primarily chasing. I wish I'd purchased more, to be honest, but the boss of the warehouse was asking quite a lot per cell. Numerous iconic shots from this episode I actually own, including most of the line art and cells from the sequence as Froster looks up at He-Man and tries to pull him closer. I have them all scanned, so maybe one day I should recreate them on this channel. I think that would be a pretty cool thing to showcase. As we're about to rejoin He-Man and Froster, be sure to look at the opening shot of the scene. He-Man with his sword raised, a Horde Trooper bearing down on him, followed moments later by He-Man plunging his sword into the ground, exhausted. It's fantastic.
There! That's the last of them.
You were wonderful, He-Man. Just wonderful.
Hey! If you could leave Froster alone for a minute, He-Man, we could use a hand.
Leave her alone.
Back in the days of the episode review website, I had captured every single image from that shot of He-Man reacting, "Leave her alone." It's still a shot that blows me away, so over the top but so wonderful at the same time. And this moment of Hordak destroying a Horde Trooper so brutally was pointed out to me back in the day by Owen Sharp as a very violent scene. Yes, the Horde Troopers are robots, but seeing one slain with such brutality is hard to ignore. And here we have Sweet Bee finally revealed to the audience. And a twist in the tale. Now He-Man is going to be flirtatious with their new ally. The shot of He-Man cradling Sweet Bee with an angry Froster in the background was the very first animation cell I managed to get my hands on from this episode when Lee Clevenger went to the warehouse, pulled it from the box for me and sent it over to merry old England. What an end to Act 1. There's actually a pretty big mistake here. The opening panning shot of the Whispering Woods, it's the wrong one. There are two, and both can be seen in the episode The Peril of Whispering Woods. The original background shows the lush Whispering Woods, with the second background depicting a withered Whispering Woods after the Horde poisons them, and mistakenly, that's the background that is used at the start of Act 2. Yes, Froster's almost hateful look over her shoulder, so good. And here's a lovely piece of Sherry Wheeler animation coming up as Froster mocks He-Man's line delivery.
Sweet Bee. Well, that's a sweet name.
I just love that so much. So yeah, I'm going to go back to kind of giving an overview to this episode, a critique of sorts, because it is a fascinating episode of She-Ra. We're 12 minutes into the episode and we've seen He-Man and Froster emote in ways we've never seen them do before. And here's where I ask the question, did Filmation go too far with this depiction? In over 200 previous episodes of He-Man and She-Ra, there were no indications of these characteristics in either He-Man or Froster's personality. He-Man, for instance, has never shown a flirtatious side or even hinted that he is easily annoyed. In fact, the only time He-Man displays a flirtatious side is at the end of The Problem with Power, when he carries Teela off into the sunset and refuses to let her walk. How is an action hero so easily reduced to stammering and confusion in one episode of his spin-off series? There is very little in the He-Man series to support this new side of He-Man that we see in Sweet Bee's Home. A greater change of character could be applied to Froster. This character appears only occasionally on She-Ra during this first season. Her highlight episode is Black Snow, in which she defends her kingdom against an impending war and the trickery of the evil Horde. Black Snow quickly defines Froster as an intelligent, headstrong leader who works for the good of her people, and in Sweet Bee's Home, Froster suddenly mutates into this sorority girl going after the much-loved quarterback. Both He-Man and Froster are, at least partially, defined by this episode. Writer Bob Ford told me back in 1998 that the He-Man Froster idea came first, then Sweet Bee's Home came later, so I think it's fair to ask, did Bob Ford and Tom Tataranaowicz put this lucrative story idea ahead of character continuity? Was the concept so tempting that they lost sight of the characters involved? For a writer and a director to take two previously defined characters, both headstrong and moral, and loosen them up by means of sexual tension is, in one word, a risk, especially on a Filmation show. Luckily for Bob Ford and Tom Tataranaowicz, they pulled it off. Let me just take a few minutes to explain why. During the days of the He-Man and She-Ra episode review website, Eatock and I coined the phrase He-Man the Etherian or Adam the Etherian. So let me explain what that is by asking the question, why didn't the premise of Sweetbee's home happen on Eternia? Well, yes, He-Man had already ended production a year before this episode was made, and Sweetbee was a Princess of Power figure, but what's the real reason this story was never told on Eternia? The answer is because the young boys who watched the He-Man show would have never approved of their hero getting all lovey-dovey with a girl. Romance is practically non-existent in the He-Man series thanks to its primarily male audience. While Teela and Adam and Teela and He-Man had a few sacred moments, there was barely a trace of their feelings for one another. Now, change television shows and go to She-Ra, Princess of Power. All of a sudden, it seems He-Man is giving looks left and right to every woman he sees. Both Glimmer and Castaspella have the hots for Adam, and Froster just won't let go of He-Man. Girl viewers everywhere delighted in the teasing romances, and the boys who watch She-Ra secretly like them too. Here's the key. Writers found the She-Ra series to be a great source of freedom for exploring the character of He-Man. On his own show, He-Man had to carry the burden of being the testosterone-pumped action hero. Filmation slipped morals and gentleness into their lead character, but overly romantic scenarios may have weakened him in the eyes of the audience. The situation becomes quite different though when He-Man guest stars on She-Ra. Here, She-Ra is the lead character, so He-Man is free from his usual burden. The writers are allowed to show the softer side of He-Man thanks to a primarily female audience. This new side of He-Man arises in Sweetbee's home thanks to a situation we have never seen He-Man encounter before. The merciless attack of a seductive, beautiful woman who cannot keep her hands off of him. On Eternia, everyone knows the legend of He-Man, but on Etheria, few people know him. For the character of He-Man himself, this represents a unique situation in that Etheria is the one place where he is not widely recognised. Thus, he can act differently from his usual demeanour and moral upbringing, hence the phrase, He-Man the Etherian. When reacting to Froster, He-Man does not respond the way he would if he were on Eternia. On Eternia, he would probably laugh it off and be able to go away from Froster, taking refuge in the royal palace in the guise of Prince Adam. He would not openly show his reactions to Froster, but he does in Sweetbee's home because he is on Etheria. At first, He-Man is clearly attracted to Froster, even flattered. Then he is embarrassed, shocked, and ultimately annoyed by her actions. We see a tidal wave of emotion come from He-Man, a spectrum of feelings he would only ever reveal on Etheria. Now let's take a look at Froster. Okay, so Black Snow set Froster on the path to be an intelligent and controlled adult. What she does in Sweetbee's home presents a very different definition of the word adult. Part of the reason Froster acts so differently in these two episodes is for the same reason that He-Man acts differently from his usual appearances. Both He-Man and Froster are away from their homes, where their responsibilities lie. In removed environments, they are free to express themselves. There's no doubt that the Froster we see in Black Snow is the Froster we would always prefer to see on screen. But this Froster in Sweetbee's home, as I described her earlier, this sorority girl, is a fresh take on the character. And let's be honest, we've all been in the position where we meet someone for the first time and flirt outrageously with them, or vice versa, having them flirt outrageously with us, leading to feelings of reciprocation, or one or two times in my own life where I've turned into He-Man, awkwardly trying to escape. Another reason this episode works is the talent involved. Bob Ford, arguably the best writer on He-Man and She-Ra, and Tom Tataranao's arguably the best director on She-Ra, they saw the potential in the studio's most popular cartoon, He-Man, and a little-used supporting player in his spin-off series, Froster. Somehow, they got everything past the heads at Filmation, and even when they had to rein it in, they still made it all look dangerous and lust-driven. The feat is frankly unbelievable. Sherry Wheeler, the animator I've already spoken about, is most directly responsible for giving us those beautiful expressions on He-Man and Froster, and even the choice looks given by She-Ra and Mimister. Throughout this episode, you can see He-Man's discomfort and confusion as to how he should react, while Froster gives seductive looks in a hormone-driven play for He-Man's affections. It took the efforts of many brilliant, talented people at Filmation to create what we see before us, and I'm so thankful for it. The writers of He-Man and She-Ra always did their best to appeal to both the child viewer and the adult viewer. Sweet Bee's Home achieves at appealing to both. It shows a few of our favourite characters giving new reactions in new situations. Froster is literally defined by this episode. Against it, her other appearances seem a tad trite, even Black Snow. For He-Man, Sweet Bee's Home gives the most powerful man in the universe a new dimension to his character, showing us that he too can feel attracted, annoyed, angered, embarrassed and shocked. Sweet Bee's Home actually goes a long way in reminding us of how human He-Man really is. And here we are, He-Man and She-Ra must find a way to launch Sweet Bee back into space, and I believe this is a nice moment to remind those of you that maybe haven't seen this episode in a while. Sweet Bee and her people are advised by She-Ra not to seek refuge on Etheria. He-Man's shocked reaction to She-Ra's advice, and She-Ra reminding her brother that Etheria is still a world ruled by the evil Horde, sees Bob Ford clearly pulling from his previous work on the episode The Price of Freedom, with He-Man learning that Eternia and Etheria are two very different worlds. I'll just start to wrap up with a couple of little continuity issues. Firstly, Froster had previously met He-Man in the episode Day of the Flowers, but displayed not an ounce of emotion. Or maybe it's because He-Man only showed up briefly in that episode. Another issue, and I think this one stings a little more, pardon the Sweet Bee pun, is that when He-Man and Sweet Bee meet again in the episode Assault on the Hive, He-Man displays no affection for her whatsoever. Boo. And we're about to see one of the most iconic images of the series, as an embarrassed He-Man breaks the fourth wall and acknowledges his defeat. I should give a shout out to the voice actors on the side of good in this episode. Melindy Britt is wonderfully playful as She-Ra in this episode, taking great delight in her brother's awkwardness. Linda Gary as Sweet Bee, giving the character a perfectly pitched, almost sickly sweet voice with an assertiveness when required. John Irwin brings a wonderful new side to He-Man that never betrays that familiar voice we all know and love. And finally, Erica Scheimer. That voice works so perfectly with the character of Froster, and Erica delivers all of the comically seductive dialogue that she needs to. So yeah, Sweet Bee's Home, an episode I absolutely fell in love with the first time I saw it, and I'm happy to report that I'm still very much in love with it today. Thank you to everyone involved from top to bottom, because you made an absolute classic. And that's the end of this episode commentary. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to like, share and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one.